morning, and welcome to episode 6 of Creative Voices. We are back. Can you imagine that 2 weeks has already flown by since our last episode? And we have both our guests again in studio here in St. Kitts with us. So I'd like to welcome Vicky Pickering and Davina Batiste. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
All right, we are in store for something exciting once again. For those of you who are tuning in on the radio, those who are listening on the website, YouTube, Facebook, so many options, and we really do value that you join us. You keep coming back. Some of you have been listening from the beginning. Welcome back. Some of you are new to us, so welcome if this is your first episode of Creative Voices. This is a special edition of Voices where we focus on all things creative, innovative, so those problem-solving, solution-oriented thinkers in our local and Caribbean landscape. So stay tuned. Of course, this show would not be possible without our fantastic, fabulous sponsors. For hour one, we have, because this is a 2-hour program, so make sure you stay tuned with us until midday. You'll be so full with all of the rich, nourishing conversation, you might not even feel hungry for your lunch when we finished with this. So we have Rams, the good food people, always there for us, providing us with wonderful opportunities with a wide variety of things to buy and quite a lot of locations from which we can buy them. So this month, actually, Rams is running some special supplement promotions. So stay tuned to the ads. You'll learn more about those. And we are back with Chubby again. For those who tuned in about a month ago, we were on board with our little sweet drinks. It's Friday, so if you're in for a treat, go and find something nice at Ram's supermarket with the good food people. We also have TDC, Together We Succeed, and TDC has some really excellent promotions going on. You can find them on their social media pages, so like and follow them if you're not already doing that. Check out TDC. You can get all kinds of things. If you go for a coloring book or crayons at Home and Building, or you can go for a car or a carburetor at Automotive, I mean, TDC has it all for us. And it's another Flow-tastic Friday with our sponsors at Flow. So check them out, see what's happening. It's always a bubble in 4th Street. There are always exciting things happening. So we're going to hear from our sponsors. We'll be right back, and we're going to jump into a very exciting conversation about creative entrepreneurship and taking that plunge to go full-time into your dream with Vicky Pickering and Davina Batiste. We'll be back soon.
Let TDC Financial Services help you go for your goals. Whether you're thinking of taking that grand vacation, down payment on a house, higher education, TDC Financial Services has various plans that will allow you to go for your goals. Choose from the Accumulator Plus, Investment Starter Plan, and Fixed Deposit. Ready to go for your goals? Visit us at TDC Financial Services, where money is made easy.
Too often, customers are counted but not valued, like mere numbers, statistics, transactions. But at Flow, we're rewriting the rules and prioritizing you, our valued customers, who have been with us through every milestone, every moment. That's why we're putting our money where your loyalty is. Flow customers claim your $600 gift card when you add internet to your current postpaid plan, because loyalty isn't a one-way street. At Flow, loyalty flows both ways.
Welcome back to Creative Voices, episode 6 already. So we have another exciting conversation in store for you today. I am joined by Vicky Pickering and Davina Patisse, two women, I have to say, who inspire me a lot. So we'll get to more of that as the conversation unfolds. So they are what I describe as creative entrepreneurs, and I wanted to get a good sense of what that actually meant. So looking it up, I found a definition by the Muse, which I thought aptly captured what makes creative entrepreneurship so distinctly important, especially in our world now, but always. So a creative entrepreneur, as defined by the Muse, is someone who combines artistic vision and innovative thinking with business acumen to build, and this part I like, to build ventures that inspire, solve problems, and leave a meaningful impact. And that really is where I thought this definition really hits the nail on the head, because it's the motivation for the business that is a little bit different than some other businesses that might be motivated by financial gain, profitability, that type of thing. So we always start at Creative Voices with a tell me your story approach. So both of you have known for a while, and both of you have also known in so many different creative spheres. So, you know, you make jewelry, you make bags, you start NGOs, you do collectively as friends as well. You do so much. So perhaps I'll start with you, Vikish. If you could tell us a bit about your story, and don't be bashful, because I don't want to know just about the now, because it doesn't, very often we look at people and we think, okay, we see what they're doing now. We see what you're doing now, but that has to start somewhere. And for some people it starts, in fact, we've had a guest that spoke to their earliest memory being at about 3 or so, and this really being that little mustard seed that we speak about in a biblical sense. So Vikish, tell us your story, your creative story. Where did it start? How did you navigate to where you are now? What big moves have you taken? Because I know you've taken some, so share your story with us.
First of all, a pleasant good morning to the listening audience, and thank you so much for having me. Listening to you say that we inspire you, I'm sure Davina would agree to you are such an inspiration to us.
Thank you.
Yes, so thank you so much. When it comes to my story, it's kind of hard to tell it and not go back to childhood, because like that person, for me, that's where it all started. And I think it was where, without knowing what it was, I recognized the purpose on my life from that very early age. Albeit I had to go through some healing to be able to operate from a place of balance. But let me go back. So I'm a little girl. The first memory of myself growing up is in the Newtown community, right on Pan Road, opposite where Gillies sell chicken, right? And I was the third of, at that time, 4 children for a single mother. And times get challenging for a single mother raising 4 children. With not much, support from anywhere other than the community, in a sense. She went to work, we could go by friends to play and that kind of thing. Now, I was surrounded by a lot of things that didn't feel good at the moment. And after hearing about love, I started to wonder, like, these people who should love me, in my understanding, my little understanding, they don't always make me feel good. So what is love, and how is it supposed to feel? What does it look like? How does it behave? And so from that very early age, I had this curiosity about wanting a definition for love.
So about what age were you at which? Because this is very reflective thinking for a child, At what age do you think?
I know I was in primary school. I want to say one of the grades I remember is grade 3.
Okay.
So it was as early on as grade 3. Okay. Yeah. And it was just this deep-rooted curiosity. I found myself in a shell somewhat. I remember Dr. Hodge. When you go to him, you're going to get a good chatting and a good storytelling. And I remember going to him, he would show me my card. Been coming here since 6 months, and he would tell me about myself. But one of the things he said, I used to think you can't talk. He said, every time I see you, you was in a corner and you was quiet.
Okay.
Looking back, I've grown to understand that that's not necessarily who I am, but the circumstances kind of forced me into a place where I had to be able to cope, and that was how I coped and survived. So, curious about love, continuing with this thing, and I could remember saying to myself, sorry, that's a no-no. But yeah, I remember having this desire to do something because I wasn't satisfied and I didn't want to just sink into what I was seeing. I wanted more, I wanted better, and I didn't just want it for me. So I wanted to do this thing. I don't know what the thing was at that point in time, but I wanted to do it and to help people do it too. So that not just that I would be happy and I would live full, but that the people around me would be happy and live full, you know? So the journey for me started in that place, in that space, that desire. And over time, I would find myself always coming back to it. Like years later, I remember, it was like, Vikish, remember you got to do this thing? And at one point, I actually had a name. I was like, okay, I'm going to call it Breaking the Cycle.
Okay.
Right? Don't ask me how, but I just knew that I had to make an effort to do something. And I do believe it was something greater than me. Whenever I reflect, I always see God in my life, even before I had a relationship with him and knew what, or even understood who he is, right? So I remember finding a book and I was like, let me start. What would people need to be able to get to that place? So I started thinking about the different aspects of a person, like the physical, the emotional, the mental, all of that. And I started writing like
So you're in high school
topics.
now when you're writing this out?
Yeah,
Okay.
in high school.
Okay.
Because not a pressure, but it was like this urge to
Like a
just
calling
don't
almost.
let it go. Like you have to remember it, keep it in mind. So I started writing down, and then but what happened to these different aspects? And I put the book down, and like something inside me just knew that over time it would come. I started looking at my situations in a different way. I would start to ask myself, like, what am I walking away with? What did this teach me? And so I started developing, without knowing, strategies and a better understanding of what needed to be done in order to heal past some of the things that we experience in life. Let's fast forward some more now. So I'm a grown woman working. I've ventured through different creative outlets, doing hair, making jewelry now, just makeup, anything you think of, and I wanted to, I would try it. But again, there is the tugging to don't forget the thing, the thing what you're supposed to do, don't forget it. So I started doing more research, listening to different speakers and, coaches, that kind of stuff. And I remember one day hearing, this is the thing that you're going to do. This is the thing you're going to do. What you do will include some of this, which was speaking. And I'm like, me. Because, you're listening to people with all these great stories. And I was like, Megan, no stories to tell nobody, right? But as always, when you're pursuing purpose, the possibilities tend to begin to surface as you move. One day I got a call from, and I could remember this day, you was leaving. It was my birthday and you was leaving for vacation. And you came to visit me at work before you left, right? And it was shortly after you left, I think, I got the phone call from somebody from New Horizon, the rehabilitation center, and they asked me about doing a workshop for making jewelry. I didn't even think about the jewelry part of it. All I thought about was the access to these children who probably could use. So I was like, yeah, sure. Right? After I hung up the phone, I was there like, what? What going to teach them? Right? But
your instinct was yes, because this was an opportunity to help and to connect to that early vision you had for breaking cycles and creating spaces for love. So that now forced me to create a workshop, something, and then throughout the whole workshop,
everything was just about life. You know, you're teaching jewelry, but it's showing, for example, sometimes you're making a piece, you have the vision for the piece, and you go to the drawing board and you start making it, and you get, you know, something doesn't go as planned. But you don't give up.
Right.
You keep going, and you go back, and sometimes you have to tweak it, sometimes you just have to try again, but usually at the end of it is something beautiful.
Right.
So then out of that now I came up with, you know, Lessons of an Artisan. But I remember leaving the center that first night, and it was kind of a bittersweet moment for me, because I knew it was a rehabilitation center, right? But in my mind, I didn't equate it to jail.
Right.
You know what I mean? So showing up there and seeing all the security, like I felt really bad for the kids that they would have to be in that situation, even though I understood it was
because you hadn't
necessary.
mentally prepared yourself for that kind of experience. You knew that they would be within a facility, but you weren't thinking of the security and the detention type component of the facility.
Yes. But driving down the pathway in the bus, I felt so content, because I heard, you see, you have stories, because the amount of stories I ended up telling the kids on that day, right? I didn't plan the stories. They weren't a part of the workshop, but with each step in the lesson, it would just come out naturally. So I was like, oh yeah, that's true. I do have stories.
So you see, it's so funny the way that life often answers the questions that we ask within our mind, you know. So you're having this very personal thought, and then all of a sudden life gives you the answer. So what story do I have? And then you find a moment where you realize, oh, I have several stories. I think that you know, everybody has a different philosophy of life, but you know, for those who believe in some type of divine power or something, then it makes you feel like you're having an experience of that in your life, you know.
Definitely. So after that, no, it was like, okay, so that's not an excuse. You have these stories, and it's time to do what you have to do. I remember during COVID, Les Brown started advertising a workshop, and I was like, I can't afford this, you know, but I know I should be doing this. So I I took the leap and went through the course, and it was so well worth it. And since that, I've been using what I learned from it to help me better tell the stories and help me better navigate this thing that I'm supposed to be doing, which I do believe I'm in the middle of the manifestation of that. It's not like a concluded thing. I feel like it's actually just the beginning of the fullness of it.
You're right.
So fast forward a little more now, you know, I'm doing all of that.
You would think that you've lived such a long life to fast forward over so many paths, but obviously a very full life. We're going to before we fast forward, we're going to take a break. We're going to hear from our sponsors, our magnificent, wonderful sponsors, and we'll be right back. So stay tuned. Already a very interesting and inspiring story.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. Win FM.
Rams the good food people, always there to serve you. Rams the good food people, locations right near you. Rams the good food people, in-store specials for you. Rams the good food people. Rams. When you need better service, Rams is always here.
into extra cash this Easter with TDC Financial Services. Need extra cash for your Easter celebrations? Whether it's shopping, home upgrades, a weekend getaway, or a fresh start. With TDC Financial Services Easter loan promotion, you can borrow up to $30,000 at low interest rates with affordable repayment terms. Getting your loan is quick and easy. Just visit any TDC Financial Services branch in St. Kitts on Central Street and in Nevis in the Longstone Building on Main Street in Charlestown. But hurry, this Easter offer is only available for a limited time. TDC Financial Services, where money is made easy.
Too often, customers are counted but not valued, like mere numbers, statistics, transactions. But at Flow, we're rewriting the rules and prioritizing you, our valued customers, who have been with us through every milestone, every moment. That's why we're putting our money where your loyalty is. Flow customers claim your $600 gift card when you add internet to your current postpaid plan. Because loyalty isn't a one-way street. At Flow, loyalty flows both ways.
Welcome back to Creative Voices episode 6. We were hearing from Vicky Pickering. I mean, am I saying your surname right? I just realized that I never actually tested that with you to make sure I'm saying it right. You know, sometimes people let you say their name wrong and don't tell you anything, and then you hear them say it, and then you realize, wait, all these years I've been saying it wrong.
No, it's correct.
But I thought, I never stopped to ask you that. So, yes. So we've been hearing, I find it very interesting that what you've told us so far suggests that from a very early age, you had this awareness that a lot of people, well, I can speak for myself, that it's an awareness that I didn't come into until adulthood, but maybe that's also speaks to sometimes circumstance of life that makes you reflect on things in a different way. So that's also part of the interest and the value of sharing story, because we don't know these things unless we share our stories with each other, and then we find these things out. So I want to thank those of you who have tuned in. I know that we have a lot of listeners who tune in online and who are here with us as we tell story, as we share story. And please stay tuned, because remember, in the second hour, the phone lines open. But even before that, I'm checking the chat, and you can add your comments there, and I'll ask the questions. I'll share your comments with our guests as well. So, Vicky, you were you had just fast forwarded again.
Fast
right?
forward again. Yes.
So, roll. We're back on scene with you.
Okay. So, I'm doing all of this, trying to navigate and fully understand what this thing is supposed to look like. I'm also working full time.
Right. Okay. I hadn't factored that part.
Yes, I'm also working full time and trying to shape this thing, and that can be quite a challenge, especially if the job is very demanding.
Right.
Then you get home and it's like, I'm done for the day. But what kind of pushed me over the edge was when we started the flea market, and we started doing it consistently every 2 weeks. The more we were able to help people, the greater the desire in me to do more grew. And so I remember thinking, it's like I want to do this more. Like, I want to just be into it fully, and this be the thing that leads to the other thing, the greater thing, and just kind of tie it up together, So I was meditating on it for a while, and of course asking God, like what we gonna do? Is time or I don't talk to him necessarily in this whole yet and the way.
You have a conversation.
Yeah, it's like, if you're sending me, you're gonna have to show me how this thing gonna go, right? And like when to do it, what to do next, and that kind of thing. And I remember one day it was just like, I'm doing it. No long lot of thinking. It was like, lady, I'm doing it, I'm gonna do it. And resigned. The last day working was the 20th of September last year.
Okay.
And since then, I've had no regrets. Is it challenging? Definitely. Is it worth it? Of course.
Right.
So that's where I am right now. Not just continuing with the flea market fiesta is a part. It's a fundraising effort of the Dream Center SKN.
Okay.
which is the bigger picture, the Dream Center, where our mission is to inspire hope in self and to revive hope in humanity. I remember in trying to shape what the vision or mission would look like, I used to just allow the words to flow freely. And the first time, the words that came to me before we were doing much of anything, it was that the Dream Center is a space where we breathe life into the dreams of others. We give hope by inspiring the realization of purpose and possibility. And I still think that stands, and that is the foundation from which we operate.
Yeah. I think that's, I think it was Mother Teresa who said something along the lines of, we may not all do great things or something like that, but we can do small things with great love. And I think very often, because that is a magnificent mission statement, and the purpose of the organization is also magnificent, but sometimes we shy away from these magnificent things because we think it's too big, it's too lofty an aspiration, it's beyond my capabilities, or whatever the case may be. But there's so much love that's poured in to the activity and to the work that it's a fitting goal, because that is actually what the mission is. So what does that mission, though, look like to you? So you said inspiring hope in self
And
reviving hope in humanity.
And now, I think reviving hope in humanity is an easy thing to imagine. It means that there is a need, and we just help because there is a need and it's visible to us. Inspiring hope in self could look different now, because it depends on the person that you're dealing with. But the hope is to have persons recognize what they're capable of and to be willing to kind of hold their hand and help them get to the place where, like, yeah, you could do this. Like, the best way to describe it is this way. One of the things I love about looking at the auditions, like American Idol and that kind of thing, is the journey that people go on. And there was this one guy who always remains with me, Chris Rene. His audition, they asked him, what do you do for a living? He was like, I haul trash, He's a garbage collector. But he dared to go on the stage and sing a song that he wrote.
Oh, wow.
And I remember all the judges were looking at one another like, oh Lord, here we go now. They literally had that look.
Yeah.
And you know how they can be, right?
The eyes rolling.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And I remember when the music started and he started singing, slowly they were just like, and he just went from till they were there like rocking in the seats. And when he finished singing and they stood up and applaud, he just kind of break down, because for him that was the realization that I can do this thing, So that's what inspiring hope in self looks like. But for different people, it would be a different, way.
Yeah, and then it connects also with that earlier story of creating space and community of love and support as well, because I imagine that in order to inspire hope in the individual, a big part of what a Dream Center is doing is to provide that encouragement, to provide, and maybe there's a connection there with the flea market also, in that it provides some people with an opportunity to have new fashion more readily, but also you have a team that works with you at the Dream Center, right? So they also, well, I'm a flea market shopper. Yeah. And I just have to tell our listeners, and if anybody's watching, and I think some are on live stream, so these, there's this popular way of people referring to themselves as influencers. And I have to admit that sometimes I wonder if the term is used before people actually have any influence, so you can call yourself an influencer before you've actually influenced anyone. But I think that a lot of the people who have influence and influence others are often kind of unaware of it, because that's not the objective, right? True. So the objective is to make change, or the objective is to create healing, or whatever the case may be. But the work or the character of the individual inspires influence, meaning that somebody's behavior may change, or they may do something a little different, or So to give an example of how both of you influenced me, as I got ready to come here today, so my shirt is a flea market shirt, but it's not the kind of flea market shirt I would have ordinarily purchased had I not have seen a reel, I think is the right term, from Davina on social media, because Davina also does, and we're going to get to her story next. So I'm kind of jumping the gun here, but I'm bridging the two. So Davina does these wonderful videos on styling thrift purchases, and she also starts to do, which I never thought to do, like to look up the story of the garment. So like, where did it come from? I mean, in that, where was it, if it's a designer piece, where was it made, that type of thing. But you had a video once where you had taken a men's shoot, a man's shoot, and I never thought about that because my style is very girly, I'm told, so it's very flowy and colorful, but I thought, oh, you know, I bought this shirt, I was really thinking of it for a young man, but they didn't want it, so I was like, well, okay, maybe I could style it with, you know, something girly, and it could work. But I never would have thought of that. I wouldn't have the shirt if I didn't get it from the flea market at a ridiculously affordable price, probably of about 5 EC. And then B, I wouldn't have thought to even wear it if I hadn't seen Davina's video showing how you can style these things coming out of her thrift experiences also. So you all create new things, but you repurpose things that have existed before, but you look up the story of the things, and I am very grateful that you share these gifts and talents, because certainly I benefit from it. I have like a whole wardrobe of flea market fashion now, and I feel like I look good all the time. So it's working for me. It is working. It's working for me. But there's a feel good that comes with it too, because when you spoke just now of the mission of the Dream Center, it's the feel good comes in many factors, in that you feel good because you have a new item of clothing. So there's the individual personal feel good for that, and kind of more self-centered type of approach. But you also feel good because you save some good money in buying it. You feel good, one, because you also are located on the bay. So for me to go to you, I have to be by the sea. And there's something very therapeutic and beautiful about that too. You're part of community, so you have a community of people that, if you're a regular, by the time you get there, they already know what things you like, where to go to get what you want, you know. So that's good. But then if you donate also, which I also do, you feel good because you're not contributing to the landfill. You're contributing to a sustainable approach to fashion, and then you're also contributing because through the sales, the money is going into really important community work. So there's so much good energy that I actually feel really dismayed on Saturdays when I can't make it. And sometimes I will say, Sarah, you don't have anything to give and you don't really need anything to buy, but I just want to go. You know?
You can just swing by, we just chat a bit, you know.
Yeah. No, if I swing by, I'm buying something, but I just can't get the time, you know. And so it's really, you're really hitting on a lot of beyond, I think, even the vision. So when you're looking at inspiring hope in self, and you describe that in terms of inspiring hope in self in the individuals whose projects perhaps or initiatives you may support. But beyond that, for those who contribute to the work of the Dream Center, there's also hope in the self of the individual who is contributing in that way, you know. So there's a wider ripple effect of people that this type of work touches. So that's really very impactful, I would say. So you both have influence. Well, you have influence on me, I would say. So yes. All right, so we're going to take a little break, hear from our sponsors, and we'll be back and we'll hear from Davina, who has a creative entrepreneurial journey that is, both of these ladies have taken a recent plunge that I'm familiar with because I took that plunge in 2022. So I'm interested to hear that journey of that dive for you. So we will take a break, hear from our fantastic sponsors. Don't go too far, we'll be right back.
Found the sound 98.9 Win FM.
Let TDC Financial Services help you go for your goals. Whether you're thinking of taking that grand vacation, down payment on a house, higher education, TDC Financial Services has various plans that will allow you to go for your goals. Choose from the Accumulator Plus, Investment Starter Plan, and Fixed Deposit. Ready to go for your goals? Visit us at TDC Financial Services, where money is made easy.
Too often, customers are counted but not valued, like mere numbers, statistics, transactions. But at Flow, we're rewriting the rules and prioritizing you, our valued customers, who have been with us through every milestone, every moment. That's why we're putting our money where your loyalty is. Flow customers claim your $600 gift card when you add internet to your current postpaid plan. Because loyalty isn't a one-way street. At Flow, loyalty flows both ways.
Rams the good food people always there to serve you. Rams the good food people locations right near you. Rams the good food people in store specials for you. Rams the good food people. Rams. When you need better service, Rams is always here. Better value, better prices. Rams is always here. Rewarding your loyalty. Rams is always here. We are community. We are family. We are family. Rams for you and me. We are community. Rams for you and me.
All right, welcome back to Creative Voices, episode 6. And what a creative conversation we have been having so far. So we've heard from Vikish, and I know I've known Vikish for a while, so I know that there are a lot of other elements that have not factored yet into the story. So we heard the version that we can fit into a linear progression from, start to finish. But there's so much more that we'll unpack as the conversation continues. So we're going to hear from Davina now. Davina also has I've known Davina not as long as Vikish, but for the time that I've known you, Davina, I've encountered so many creative outlets that you have. So tell us a bit about that, a bit about where that started for you, if it was early on or if it was something that you just kind of came into a little later on, and then tell us that journey that gets you to where we are now.
Quite the journey. I'm going to try to remember everything. But I've for as long as I've known myself, I've always loved doing things with my hands, even growing up. And I'm grateful that that's something that my parents nurtured, like they would buy me the little, I don't know if you know the little cheap watercolor paint sets that you would get with the brush that as soon as your thing it fall apart.
All the bristles fall out, you mean?
But they would, little children, you buy that for them to, do this thing. And I can remember specifically there was one painting that I did. It was like, I used to also I grew up watching Bob Ross, the guy that painted.
Okay.
I used to love watching that show. And so I tried to do like a mountain with a little scene. I think I was in primary school. And my dad was like, wow, you want to be an artist when you grow up? And that moment stuck with me. I didn't know what that meant as a child, but that the Play-Doh, doing things with my doll's hair, like always doing things with my hands. Fast forward to teenage years, so this is like high school into sixth form. I was basically like one of the class hairdressers. So another thing I love to do with my hands. I actually used to do my friends' hair sometimes when we want my hair fixed, but mama says no hairdresser for you this time because it's expensive. They'll be like, Davina, you could do me hair, and they would come over, and again my mom would buy the big tubs, and I'm talking like hair relaxer and stuff like that, and did the family hair and all that stuff. So again, something with my hands. I could remember even in sixth form. I used to have hair. I don't have any now, but my dad used to give me a weekly allowance, and I actually used to use it to go at the hair store place. There was a place on New Street that I would buy my hair extensions. Okay. To do my own hair extensions.
And you're in high school?
Sixth form. And I got so good at it. There were people who thought that it was my hair, right? Like they didn't realize, because I had a habit of cutting my hair off, and then next week I want long hair again. So I'm gonna put in the hair extension.
It's all part of the creative expression, you know, because the average person is not so bold as well to make those changes, you know. There are people that deliberate for years on whether or not they should cut their hair, you know.
And then, you know, like learn to cut my own hair. Like I used to go to initially like Laverne, who was you know, one of the more prominent hairdressers, and I would watch what she was doing in the mirror and be like,
Okay.
cut my own hair the next time, you know. So doing hair. Left sixth form, entered the world of work, chugging along, but still, you know, always doing something with my hands. Let's see, where am I in my story? I entered the hospitality industry. Now, I usually tell people this and they don't believe me. Naturally, growing up, I was quite shy. You know, afraid to talk to people. Vicky is smiling, cause.
But you both said that you were quiet, and here you are
Yeah, like,
on a radio a live radio
but,
program.
Like, you know, put me in a space with people I don't know, and it's like
Right.
it's, you know, it's intimidating
Okay.
and stuff. So at 19, I end up working at the Marriott,
Okay.
and me knowing myself, I applied to work for the operator because I'm like, that's behind the scenes. It's on the phone. I can answer a phone, you know.
Yeah.
So I apply and I go and I have that interview with that manager, and she was like, she was Hungarian. She was like, you belong on the front desk, and I'm like, excuse me, what does that mean? You know what I mean? And so I took on the challenge and started working at the front desk at the Marriott. 19 years old. In and around that time, within like a 3-year period, I ended up meeting Winnie.
Okay.
Winnie, I hope you're
She
listening.
is listening. I can tell you, she's been
Right.
commenting. She's
And
listening.
she had her first
She and Damien are tuned in.
model management kind of like boot camp, and I joined, and I was so happy that I did because doing that helped me come out of my shell. So thank you, Winnie, for that.
Awesome.
And then that opened another door because by then I was into makeup, but like doing my own makeup, right?
Okay.
So, you know, you work here, I go out buy me makeup, and I go home and I experiment and I practice. And, you know, she observed that about me. So she was like, she gave me my first opportunity to do makeup on other people,
Okay.
right? Which was a big deal. And I was like, wow. And then all of a sudden, I got this deep interest, again, doing something creative with my hands, doing makeup.
I
And
think that's how we first met, through your makeup work.
yes,
Yeah.
I believe so. So a lot of people know me from doing that because I did that for a really long time, and was able to do like the big fashion shows that she did. I got a few other like big gigs along the way. I did a lot of brides and all of this stuff, and I actually took some time off work to go to Canada, and I tell you, you're gonna learn something about me. So I did an advanced makeup art course. I'm a certified facialist, so I can actually perform a facial, including chemical peels. I did eyelash extensions and eyebrow.
Oh, wow.
Eyebrow artistry with like threading and waxing. So I'm certified in those areas. And I did makeup for a really long time, all while still having a full-time job. And I did that through my 20s. And then in my 30s now, fast forward, you know, the fast forwarding. Not necessarily that I lost interest, I don't know, it kind of happens where I kind of want to experiment with something else. And I was like, I would love to learn how to make bags. What does that take? Right?
Just like that. It just came up.
And so what I did was I went to the fabric store and I just got some material, you know, the fake leather material. And I went home. I always have a little sewing machine at home. And I was experimenting, you know, the first few tries, it looked like nothing happening. But, you know,
So you keep those secret, those you just keep those to yourself.
I didn't give up, you know what I mean? And then I graduated to, okay, let me order some leather. Let me start working with, you know, my first leather pieces were lambskin pieces, genuine lambskin pieces. And I was like, ooh, how do I make it interesting? And I don't, the splashes, the paint splashes kind of
I
became
have one
my
of
signature.
those
I
still.
know you have
Yeah,
one.
I have two actually. Yeah, they last forever. Yeah.
And so I did that for a few years, was even able to get some pieces into St. Bat's.
Oh,
so
excellent.
one day I was like, because I had been to St. Bat's before, I loved it, and I was like, wow, that would be a great market to break into. And I booked a trip, packed my suitcase full of bags, and journeyed to St. Bat's by myself to visit some shops, and was able to get some bags in there successfully. And then they were looking, that store had stores all around the world, and that shop manager had shared everything with her counterparts and was on the way to getting into the Hamptons, but then COVID hit. Right? And then that took a huge turn because it's during COVID that I discovered wellness. Now you're like, how does wellness come into creativity?
But it's funny because I've made a note here about science, because one thing that I didn't really think about with your story until you started telling it in this way is that, you know, you just spoke about your certifications in facials. I mean, that's a lot of science. So that's something that I would never touch because there's a lot of chemistry, you know, even with the eyelash extensions, all of that, you know. But then, so I made a little note because you're now going to transition us to what happened in terms of health and wellness. And that must have a lot of elements of science as well, because we've had some conversations where I would say, you know, I found out you could drink this or do this, but you're like, oh, let me check the science on it first, you know? So there's a lot of art clearly in your story, but there appears to be this connective thread of science that is in there.
Of it like that. So that's interesting that you noticed that, because I never noticed that before. But getting to the wellness part of things didn't happen right there and then. It came on the heels of my own wellness journey. So through that time, doing all those things through my 20s and early 30s, I was not really taking care of myself physically. So by the time I was in my early 30s, I was beginning to feel the signs of my body like breaking down, literally. I don't know if you remember Vicky, like it had a point in time I was in the doctor office every other week. Like I had terrible upset stomach. They kept pumping me full of medications. I was lethargic. And like you would think me doing all those things I would be like vibrant and healthy, but I was struggling. I wasn't sleeping well. I was, you know, overweight, having these stomach issues. And it's like, Davina, come on. You know what happened. You ain't looking after yourself. You know what I mean? Eating out every other day, junk food. Not exercising,
you're not nourishing your body.
Not sleeping, not nourishing my body. Of course. So this was in the summer of 2015 that I was experiencing this. And then, I know it sounds very cliche, but that January of 2016, I was like, this is it. I have to change my life. And not that I didn't try before, because, you know, all the different diet trends, the low carb, no carb, juice cleanse, military diet, Weight Watchers, all of those things I had tried and failed. I was like, I need to do something that is a lifestyle change. And so I set out to do that and was able to do that in that year, lost a lot of weight, started feeling good, having the energy, feeling so much better than I had in previous years. And then when we fast forward to 2020 now, you know, we're home in lockdown. I was living by myself at the time and, you know, trying to keep myself occupied. So I made sure I stuck to a schedule. You know, I worked out every morning. I used to be in my kitchen like on a cooking show.
Oh, okay.
So it's like every week I used to set out like, you know, what I'm going to make, and I challenge myself to make new things or make things that I enjoyed in a healthier way. And I would be in the kitchen like I have a camera crew, you know, like chefing it up, you know. And honestly, like I would say like I was my thinnest, not necessarily my healthiest. And I'll say why. Yes, I was slim and I had energy, but I was having period problems for as long as I had my period at that point. I had really painful periods that would sometimes send me to the hospital.
Wow.
I was on every pain management med you could think of, the Voltaren, the Baralgin. I was put on birth control, all these things, and it didn't work. I also still struggled with sleep. On average 2 hours a night, 3 hours a night. You know, still feeling better but not great. And I didn't realize what those things were or what was causing that. Now, I had gotten my first wellness coaching certification within 2020, and then I started my practice in helping women lose weight. That was like the primary goal, because that's what I knew how to do. I did it. That's what my study focus was. But then I realized as I was onboarding my clients, like they were having similar issues, fibroids, period problems, trouble sleeping, irritable, moodiness. And I'm like, what is going on? And so that prompted me to start to do some research. And that's when I discovered how our hormones, when imbalanced, affects us so much. And we have all these challenges.
Right. We're gonna take a little break to hear from our sponsors. But this, I think, is a transition point as well, where your journey has really it has the experience has opened your mind to something that's happening with people that you didn't originally think of when you set out on this journey, which is interesting to me because I had this, I suppose it's an assumption that I didn't really realize it was an assumption until I'm listening to you tell this story now, that, you know, that this was always the vision, that, you know, that you went into this journey because you were looking for some type of solution to hormone related issues. So this is really interesting to me that it just kind of came about, not even necessarily because of your own experience, but also because you realized that this was an experience of others, which connects very nicely to your mission and vision statement and helps me to understand that a little bit more as well. So we'll talk more about that when we come back. We're going to take a pause, hear from our sponsors. We'll be right back. Don't go too far because this conversation is getting better and better and better. We'll be back.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. Win FM.
Too often, customers are counted but not valued, like mere numbers, statistics, transactions. But at Flow, we're rewriting the rules and prioritizing you, our valued customers, who have been with us through every milestone, every moment. That's why we're putting our money where your loyalty is. Flow customers claim your $600 gift card when you add internet to your current postpaid plan. Because loyalty isn't a one-way street. At Flow, loyalty flows both ways.
Into extra cash this Easter with TDC Financial Services. Need extra cash for your Easter celebrations? Whether it's shopping, home upgrades, a weekend getaway, or a fresh start. With TDC Financial Services Easter loan promotion, you can borrow up to $30,000 at low interest rates with affordable repayment terms. Getting your loan is quick and easy. Just visit any TDC Financial Services branch in St. Kitts on Central Street and in Nevis in the Longstone Building on Main Street in Charlestown. But hurry, this Easter offer is only available for a limited time. TDC Financial Services, where money is made easy.
It's the start of the week. It's time for a new perspective. It's time for Unfiltered. Join Azar Gums, lawyer and deputy leader of the People's Action Movement, for raw and unfiltered political analysis of the current events in St. Kitts and Nevis. Tune in every Sunday evening from 7:30 p.m. on Win FM. Join Azar Gums as he breaks the mantle and cuts through the unfiltered political noise to bring you the facts. Unfiltered every Sunday evening on Win FM 98.9.
If you live in low-lying areas, be aware of the possibility of tsunamis immediately after an earthquake. A strong earthquake lasting 20 seconds or more is a natural tsunami warning. Do not wait for an official warning. Gather your family members and evacuate immediately after the shaking stops. Don't delay. A tsunami could occur within minutes.
This message is sponsored by the Australian Government, AusAid, and produced by NEMA in collaboration with Win FM.
Voices. We've been chatting with Vikish and Davina. So when we went to break, and many thanks to those of you who have been messaging the audio for Davina. It's a bit low. Hopefully that will be better now, and hopefully you are hearing us well. So when we left off, we were hearing, Davina, from you about your transition. So you started off telling us about your kind of nascent interest in art as a child, and then you've moved through many moments of creativity in your life. But for me, anyway, I feel that there's also this connecting thread of science that is woven within your story of creativity and art. So you've completed the certification in 2020. You're doing your audience of one, meaning audience of yourself, cooking programs at home during COVID. You're noticing something. So just recap for us what you're noticing in your clients as you start this health and wellness journey. So you're certified now in quite a number of things, because you have your academic certifications coming out of sixth form and so on, but you also have your creative certification in the facials and all those beauty makeup artistry and so on. And I like that about you as well, because when there's a desire for you to learn something that will enable you to make impact, and that's actually a question that we get a lot at Bougainvillea Books and Gifts, and I'll say more about that when we transition into our second hour. But in terms of the artisans who are making things and the qualifications and the certifications, and I'm always really pleased to say that, artisans locally who are making and selling their soaps, and many of them, certainly the ones we have in the shop, are very well trained, very well skilled, very well practiced. So I think that's an important part of the story to tell as well, and I like that you do that. So you're interested in this thing, you're going into it, but you're going to learn how to do it well. But you're noticing something else that's popping up with your clients, right?
Yes. So onboarding my clients who are coming to me just, wanting help to lose weight. And I'm just thinking, I'm going to help them lose weight, with nutrition guidance, exercise guidance, mindset guidance. And it's like, no, my periods are really bad. I miss work. Oh, I have fibroids. I have polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Right.
I have trouble sleeping, and not just a few nights here and there, chronic sleep problems. And I'm like, what is causing these issues? Because I'm seeing these issues in myself as well. And that caused me to start doing more research. And that's when I learned about how our hormone health so deeply impacts us, especially as women. And I'm like, okay, now I know what can be done about it. And that's when I discovered that through balanced nutrition, through the use of some herbs and supplements and things like that we can find relief and pain-free periods, which was my original goal. So I was my own guinea pig in this journey. I went on my own healing journey, and I didn't even know that having a pain-free period was a thing that was possible, right? Because
so it's always been like that for you then?
I remember as a young teenager, like 14, we were living with my grandparents at the time, and it's like, you get this saying, oh, that's just some woman portion, like, and I just thought, okay, this is
you have to live with it.
I just have to endure this the rest of my life. I just have to take the painkillers or whatever. But then learning that it is common, but not normal, and should not happen at that intensity. A little bit of discomfort here and there is okay, but when it interrupts your life, that's when it becomes an issue. And so I could remember my first pain-free period. I was literally like jumping for joy, right? And I was like, okay, now I know how to tackle this. Then now I can help other people, because it is a very common problem. And with that, many of the other hormone imbalance symptoms. And through that, I did several courses, also studied herbalism, more specifically for herbs that can help nourish and support our body so that we can feel our best every day. Because ultimately, I learned that I could do so much when I feel so much better, right? And so I want to help other people do that too, because we all have our God-given purpose. And I feel like, honestly, this was, I call it a divine download from God, because I tell Vicky all the time, girl, this can't be me, like when I hear the stories coming out of, the transformation stories coming out of the use of the tea. So I created the hormone support tea. I launched it in 2022, but it was in development before that, development and testing. So of course I was my own guinea pig. I did the research. I pick the herbs based on, their energetics and all of that stuff, what, the properties and what they can assist with. And then I was like, okay, I have this list. Okay, how do I put it together that they work well together? Yeah. I want it to taste good. I want it to smell good. I want it to look good. What is the packaging going to look like? Right? And then, so I tested it on myself. I was pleased. And then by then, I had connections to so many women with varying challenges. So I reached out to a few of them with different issues. And I said, hey, I developed this. This is what it is. I would love to give you a batch for you to try and for you to give me your honest feedback. Right? And I really didn't expect feedback for a while because natural remedies do take a little while and consistency to work, right? And I fully expected to, refill everybody before they started telling me. But 3 weeks in, I had people telling me they were already seeing results. There was one young lady, she was the first person to share with me. She had really terrible periods too, so I related to her situation. Our stories were very similar, and she said her period had come and she was shocked at the fact that she didn't have to take the painkillers and that she felt so good and she could go to work because she would miss like that first day or two of work. And I'm like, this has to be the hand of God. You know
weren't
what
expecting
I mean?
it so soon.
And so that was 3 years ago, and the stories keep coming out of how it's helped so many people that even some doctors, I'm learning through customers are telling me that doctors are recommending it to some of their patients. We have women coming off of their medication. So that's so exciting. And so since then, so I transitioned from Wellness with Davina B to Blissfully Balanced Tea Company in 2022. It felt like the right move at the time. As I transitioned to that, and I'm sure you're probably like, how is that in the creative industry? Well, like I said, I wanted it to be functional, but when you brew it, it looked pretty in the cup.
Yeah, but it's still creative because you're problem solving. So you're creative in that so like going back to that definition that we had in the beginning, it's a business venture that inspires, solves problems, and leaves a meaningful impact. So that fits very squarely within the definition of a creative enterprise, so that seems to be exactly what you're doing, actually ticking all those boxes.
And then since then I've launched 3 more blends, 2 flavor blends, because I kind of want to have a separate branch I call Fantastic Flavors. Just people who enjoy a cup of tea. And then this year I launched Grace and Ease, which is the perimenopause and menopause relief tea. So like we have what I call the 2 hormone support superheroes. So we have the hormone support, which is best for us women in the earlier stages of life, and then Grace and Ease as we transition to the later stage in life, both supporting hormone health, but with a targeted approach for each phase of life. Last year, I actually started dabbling in events and activities. So last summer I had what I call another divine download.
I like that too. I think I saw you did a video on that, and I found that I hadn't heard the term before. So did you coin it, or did you hear it somewhere else?
I heard it somewhere else after, but I can't remember hearing it before. It's possible, but to host like a tea blending experience where people come together, because community is also really important for wellness. Where you could dress up and come together and do something fun and interesting. So I did the very first one last August, which was really successful. And since then, it's kind of morphed into something a little bit different, a little bit more light and airy. And I've hosted it at the Park Hyatt, and now we're gearing up to host it as a weekly activity there, and hoping to do the same at the Marriott. And then I'm adding another activity. I don't drink alcohol really anymore. I actually gave it up in 2021. I might have a sip of something here and there, but
it's not part of your lifestyle anymore.
It's not a part of my lifestyle anymore. But I also don't want to just drink soda water and a splash of cranberry.
I've been there, and it's really uninspiring.
And so I already wrote my recipes for Blissful Botanicals, a herbal mocktail making experience where we'll use some tea blends that I already have as a base, and then using some fresh ingredients to make interesting drinks that make you not miss the alcohol.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Vicky had one already. She had my
Delicious.
I gave her a sample of my ginger citrus rosemary spritzer.
Ginger,
Delicious.
citrus, rosemary spritzer. All right.
Yes, just to give you a little taste of
What's to come.
a little idea of what's to come. So, yeah, that's kind of been my journey.
So all this time you're still working
I'm
full
still
time?
working full time.
Yeah.
It's a demanding job.
Yes,
you know.
yes.
Through the years, like I said, I started my career in hospitality at 19 and grew through the ranks. 20 of those years in leadership.
Wow.
So lots of responsibility there while still trying to, do my own thing. But I'm proud to say that last Friday was my last day of work in the corporate world.
That's
it
a
was
big step.
Huge leap of faith,
Yeah.
but I don't regret it one bit. And I really look forward to what this chapter of my life has to unfold.
But I think that's very exciting because I think it takes courage to do what you have both done. And there are a lot of people that do the creative hustle on the side and they do something that also fulfills them. So it doesn't necessarily mean that your full-time work is not fulfilling you as well, but it's not necessarily fulfilling you in the same way. And we'll talk a little bit about that in terms of what happens when creative people are not necessarily ensuring that there's a creative outlet for that work that could be purpose-driven as well, or may just be something that helps to create that balance that we speak about so very often. So we're going to take a little break and we're going to hear from our sponsors, but we have transitioned into our second hour. Can you believe it already? And we have a second set of sponsors that are on board for this second hour. We have our friends at Horsford's Try Horsford's First. Horsford's has so much to offer, but what is particularly exciting about Horsford's this week that I'd like to share is that they also have an exceptional video that you can find on their social media platforms. And this is telling the story, as you know we're into story here, of a company, a Kittitian company that has been in existence and has just celebrated its 150th anniversary. There must be creativity, there must be innovation within that company for it to have continued to evolve, and not just to be here, but to be here and doing so well. So we extend our congratulations to our sponsors for our two Horsfords. And we also have on board Bougainvillea Books and Gifts for our second hour. So that is a nice little boutique gift shop and bookstore, Caribbean bookstore, celebrating all things Caribbean. So you can find some of these teas that we've been speaking about. And we have events upcoming. We have a wonderful event with Davina on the 11th, April 11th. That's from 5 to 7. These are free and open to the public. So come on by, enjoy, mingle with artists, artisans, authors, hear their stories. Bougainvillea is a nice little creative space for our community here on Island. So we're going to take a break. When we come back, remember that our phone lines are also open. So I'll share those numbers with you, and you can keep the comments coming. We're really enjoying those. So thank you very much for those who have been typing in on our website, our YouTube channel, our Facebook channel, and for those who have been sending in WhatsApp messages to me privately. I'm very grateful for the feedback. So stay tuned. We'll be back in just a moment.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. Win FM.
Supermarket shoppers understand that convenience matters. At Hortsport's Value Mart IGA, we know that price matters most. Ample parking and the widest variety matter. At Hortsport's Value Mart IGA, we know that price matters most. Clean, spacious aisles and the highest level of customer service all matter. At Hortsport's Value Mart IGA, price matters most. We've renewed our commitment to guarantee the lowest prices in the Federation. Why? Because we understand that in this tough economic environment, price matters most. Shop smart. Shop Value Mart, where price matters most. Farms Estate Nevis and Wellington Road, St. Kitts.
Price matters most.
Welcome to Bougainvillea Books and Gifts, where every visit is a journey through time and imagination. Step into a world of literary wonders at our boutique bookstore, where every book tells a story and every corner holds a treasure waiting to be discovered. Immerse yourself in the enchanting aromas of our scented candles, perfect for creating a cozy atmosphere in any space. Explore our exquisite handcrafted jewelry. Whether you're searching for the perfect gift for that special someone or simply indulging in a little self-care, Bougainvillea Books and Gifts has something for everyone.
Welcome back to Creative Voices, episode 6. We have been having a very interesting conversation with Vikish and Davina, two creative entrepreneurs who have jumped in entirely. This is a story I can identify with, as I made a similar transition to creative entrepreneurship from a career. I could never do that kind of divide myself in two worlds in that way, though, as you've both described in your journey. You were doing a lot of these creative works, but it could be that, or it could be that my career allowed me to be very creative within that space as well. So, you know, that is something interesting. And there's an article that I came across that suggests, well, you let me know if you agree with this or not. So the article is entitled Successful But Unfulfilled, Finding Your Way Back to Creative Work That Feels Like You. So I don't know if either of you have ever had to actually find your way back, because you kind of seem to have always been tapped into it a little bit. But the article suggests that in many ways, and I'm quoting here, in many ways we are groomed to believe that creativity is an extra, something that comes second to stability, achievement, or fitting in with societal norms. For years, we pushed down our creative urges, telling ourselves that personal fulfillment will come later, that we'll get back to it, quote, once we've made it, or once things settle down. But over time, those creative needs don't disappear. Does that resonate with you? Do you think that if society was different, you might have jumped into this creative endeavor earlier on, or do you think it was just part of your journey for it to unfold the way that it did? Or because the suggestion here is that, you know, we have this culture sometimes of looking at artistic, creative endeavors as something that you do on the side. And there could be many reasons for that. I think one of the reasons is that the underside part of it is because you need the bread and butter before you can eat the cake. So, you know, I don't know if does that connect with you, or would you say that that doesn't really apply in our local circumstance? Because this, I'm not sure of because it was published online, but it doesn't have a reference to where the person is coming from. But it's not here because I don't know her. So
I think it does apply, not necessarily to us, not necessarily to me. I think it was necessary to go through the journey, and I think every step of the way I've always been finding an outlet to be creative, whether it's with the making of stuff, jewelry, or you know, decor. When it comes to the Dream Center work, though, I've literally been doing that all my life. When I look back at it, I just didn't have it under an umbrella. It's just always a part of me. So that outlet was always there. And I think I had to go through the journey in order to fully understand what it takes, you know, to sustain it.
Yeah, well, Marcus Buckingham, he's a psychometrician he's from Britain, but he's based in the US now, and he's written some really interesting books. And in something that he's written along the way that I've read, that he says that, you know, it takes 10 years to become expert in something. So both of you have just started these new journeys full time, but you've been doing this work for a long time. So you've really kind of stepped into it, perhaps in a sense also at a moment where you're really expert enough in the thing to do it in this way. So you've used the opportunity that you had while working full time to build your expertise, to build your experience, and then to go in full time. Would that be a fair thing to say?
Yeah, and nothing is ever wasted. We can use every experience, and I could speak about, like, for example, I think, and Vikish would agree, our time at Christoph have allowed us, we were lucky to have management and like people who noticed that creativity about us, that tapped into that a lot.
Right.
So we did have the opportunity in that role to be creative. You know, we had to put on events, we had to figure out decor. Like they really tapped into that and then allowed us certain opportunities that we are really grateful for. So I don't know if you remember, prior to COVID, you know, they had the marina.
Yes.
And they had the shops, and we were able to sell our items in the shops where the people are coming off.
I
the
shopped
mega
there with Vicky before. Still have the items in my closet.
You know, so mega yachts were coming off, and you know, buying our pieces, and so I think beyond that, even I find that I could use everything that I've learned along the way, all the training, all the connections, and everything, to help me be successful today.
Oh yeah.
So that's the way that I look at it. Like, I needed the journey. When you think about even what I do now, like, it was necessary for me to have the journey. Like, if I had not been somebody who struggled with their health and weight and stuff, how could I, at this stage, speak to somebody? Like, I feel like in a field like this, you would have had to have experienced it yourself,
right?
And find that relief, find the resolution to then share it with somebody else. Like, because I couldn't remember. I think it was last year. I was like, Lord, why I couldn't be doing this before? But then he was like, no, you couldn't do it before. You needed everything that you went through to arrive to this point to be able to do it here and now. So
yeah, very true. I agree with that entirely. And I just realized, in my enthusiasm for our conversation, I forgot to remind our listeners that the phone lines are open and share the numbers. So I'm just going to share the numbers, and thank you for tuning in, and thank you for sharing as you have been doing via the chat as well. So the numbers locally are 466-0989 or 662-0989. So I'll say that again, 466-0989 or 662-0989. And if you're in the UK, you can call in at 033-344-0065. So that's 033-344-0065. And if you are in the US or Canada, you can call in via 305-921-4619 or 718-285-6984. So we have some options there available for you to call in no matter where you are. So please feel free to join the conversation. But based on what you were just saying, you just triggered a memory for me of an interview I watched with British comedian and actor Ricky Gervais, who's, you know, hugely popular. He wrote The Office and, you know, and he's done a lot of comedy. And he started doing that at a later stage in life. And people would ask, like, you know, oh, why didn't you start earlier? Or you would have been more successful if you... And he said, well, no, he had to live a life to inform the comedy. So he wouldn't have had... It was a life experience that he used to then apply his gift and talent of writing and comedy, you know? So that also reminds me of something that... And I'm interested in what you all think about this. But I know I have to take a break for the sponsors, so I'm going to take a break. We're going to hear from our sponsors, and when we come back, I'll ask this question, and it has something to do with, you know, a philosophy of our life being split into two sort of components. So I'll speak a little more about this when we get back, so stay tuned. We'll be back after a few words from our sponsors.
WINN is 98.9. 98.9 is WIN FM.
Welcome to Bougainvillea Books and Gifts, where every visit is a journey through time and imagination. Step into a world of literary wonders at our boutique bookstore, where every book tells a story and every corner holds a treasure waiting to be discovered. Immerse yourself in the enchanting aromas of our scented candles, perfect for creating a cozy atmosphere in any space. Explore our exquisite handcrafted jewelry. Whether you're searching for the perfect gift for that special someone or simply indulging in a little self-care, Bougainvillea Books and Gifts has something for everyone.
Here are your Horse's Value Mart IGA specials.
Running April 3rd to April 16th.
Now our Value Club Blue Tag specials. Mueller's pastas are just $5.99 each. Banquet chicken nuggets and tenders just $24.99. Blue ribbon ice cream $32.99. Essential everyday frozen vegetables $5.99. Morningstar meatless entrees just $20.99. Tide liquid detergent, $34.99. And now our very low weekly
value deals. Suavitel fabric softener, $17.99. Nipple pancake mixes, $11.99. Malt-to-meal bagged cereals, $17.99. All El Paso taco shells and tortilla shells, $9.99. The Colgate toothpaste, $6.99. Colgate toothbrush, soft and medium, $4.99. Shop smart, shop value mart. Tell them in Spanish.
sea listo y haga sus compras aquí en
Value Mart.
Welcome back to episode 6 of Creative Voices. You know, sometimes we've had guests in studio and we'll joke that the conversation is so interesting that we want to close the door and, you know, like we'll just lock ourselves in here and chat for the rest of the day. This is feeling a little bit like one of those episodes. Many of them, actually most of them, all of our episodes are very, you know, to me, very interesting because there are so many people in St. Kitts and Nevis in the Caribbean who are really applying creative thinking to a lot of the problems that we need to solve. Sometimes not even necessarily looking at them as a problem, but looking at them in the way that both of you have described your stories. You really didn't say, this is a problem I'm going to find a solution to. You thought, how can I be of help and value to people in my community? You know, and I think that that is a really beautiful mindset to have. So what I was saying, and we want to, again, thank people who are tuning in. Many thanks to Gian for her comment. She said that we are having a great conversation. And, you know, a lot of the people who are commenting here, I should take some notes because there are people who I think might be very interesting guests on Creative Voices as well. So, yes, so I was saying that I wanted to share something, piggybacking on our conversation before the break. And it was something that I heard at a retreat recently, where the priest who was leading the retreat, it was a religious retreat, but he was saying that if this was my recollection of it, so if anybody who's listening was there and you interpreted it differently, I apologize. This is what I interpreted him to be saying. That if your life, if you use the image of an apple as representative of your life and you cut the apple in half, right down the middle, right? So you say the first half is where you are creating your identity. So you're given a name at birth, you know, so they decided you're going to be Davina, you're going to be Vikish, you know, I'm going to be Sarah, well, I was Susan. So Susan, Sarah, one of those two. And this is part of the identity. And then as you go along, you form other parts of your identity that are based on maybe your physical appearance and where you live. And then you get into your school and how you do in school, and if you're an athlete, and if you're an academic, and if you're a model, and if you're a whatever it is. So in that first half, you're kind of forming those components of your identity. And then in the second half, where this half point is, I'm not sure. But I'm kind of feeling that I'm in it. But somebody told me that I'm not in it yet because I'm not yet 50. And I said, well, I'm almost 50, so I believe I'm in it, you know? But if you're at this midpoint, then the second half is your purpose. And I really loved that because I used to struggle with that a little bit before, like, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? What I really come here to do? Because similarly to your story, Bikisha, I felt like this yearning from early on. I want to do something. I want to make a contribution. And then I'd think, well, what is the contribution going to be? I'm not singing, so I'm not inspiring anybody with that. I'm not dancing. I can't paint nothing. You know, like, what is this contribution going to be? But your second half is your purpose. And I think that if you are tuned into that, then it makes it really compelling to answer that call. Sometimes circumstances don't allow you to answer that call, but, you know, as you said, Vikish, you're kind of thinking as a dream center took hold of you, you know, and you were like, there's going to be a moment where I need to do this. And Davina, you've just made that transition where, you know, and both of you have said that you really enjoyed the work that you were doing. So it's not like you were disgruntled and you needed to do something else, but you were looking to answer that call. What do you think about that idea, that kind of metaphor of the apple, that you have that phase of your life where you're forming your identity and then you have the phase of your life that you live in your purpose? You think it's like that, or you think it's more like it's something else?
It could be like that. I think